Hi everybody, I'm French Grandmaster Fabien Libiszewski and welcome on this DVD on the Kalashnikov variation of the Sicilian defense. So the Kalashnikov is an aggressive way to play against one e4. So it starts like this: e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, and e5. So black attacks white. Knight one more time has to move and spend some tempo. So with e5, of course, the good point is that white will lose some tempo and will try to develop as quick as possible. But of course, we are creating some weaknesses into our position, especially this square d5, which now is available for white pieces, especially a knight here there would be strong. And also we created a backward d pawn. So it's important that we are aware about that. We have some issue with our move e5, but we will try to play some dynamic way in order to compensate all this. So with e5, white has to move and has several choices, but actually the best one and the main move by far is to play knight b5. So why going to b5 and not another one? The thing is that white has to be quick and wants us to play d6. With black, we would be very happy to go d5 if it's possible. That's a key move that we would like to use, if possible, in this kind of pawn structure. Because by playing d5, we are denying white the control of the d5 square by making this exchange. And we would be the one with one pawn in the center and not white. So if white do something else, let's say go back with the knight, we can develop, attack the pawn. Let's say white protects, and we go bishop b4. And that's important because we can move our bishop out of the pawn chain before closing it. And more important, we'll be able to go d5 next move. So with bishop b4, we are attacking this pawn. Let's say white protects with bishop d3, then we go d5, and we are already better with black, as after takes on d5, knight takes d5, we have better development. We have this threat on c3, and after bishop d2, we can spoil white pawn chain and go back. Even bishop e7 is possible, of course. We will castle. White has bad pawn structure with weaknesses here. We will use the c file to attack it. Also, we might think about pushing in the center, and the knight on b3 is out of the game. So you can see in many Sicilian, white knight going to b3 when black plays e5, but actually it happens when the pawn is on d6, not on d7, and with this bishop going out, it's not a great idea for white, and we can have immediately the initiative. So that's why going back with the knight on b3, on f3, or squares like this is not so good. The less logical move would be to take. Okay, it's not bad. I mean, white is not in a worse position after taking on c6, but it makes no sense. As I mentioned, that the drawback of e5 is that this d5 square is now weak, and white can use it maybe. By taking, they are helping us a lot because we take with the b pawn, and now we are covering this d5 square, so there is no more hole here. And I also mentioned that we would be glad to play d5, and the pawn on c6 will help. So we will have a great center coming in the next few moves. So don't play d5 too quick, of course, because if you go too quickly with d5, white can trade and give this annoying check. But when you finish your development, that will be very nice to go d5 with a good play. So it's more like an amateur move to take on c6, but not really strong for white. And of course, we will analyze this and have a look in more detail, but it's not great. Another square which looks promising for white is knight f5, because they would like to jump maybe on d6. And they might think, but I am super clever, I will go to e3, and the other knight to c3, and I have a great control over the d5 square. And the idea is good. The problem for white is that we have this move d5 working very well right now. The problem for white is that this e4 pawn protects the knight and also this d5 square, so it's like overloaded. And when white takes on d5, we can grab this knight. So we don't win material, as white can take this knight on c6, but of course we cannot complain to go into this endgame, which is balanced, I have to say, but if we play every game with black with this kind of position after 8 moves, we would be super happy. So knight f5 is not so good, so by elimination, I mean there is only knight b5 remaining. So white wants to jump on d6. So some player likes to go a6, let the knight go there, trade, and propose a queen exchange. But typical Kalashnikov is more d6 now. And yes, here is the main crossroad, let's say, in which white has choices. So they might play two big moves, I have to say. It's knight c3, very logical, and I believe the best move in this position. White just develops and don't lose any time. Another big move is to go c4, playing some kind of Maroczy bind over the position. So with these 2 pawns, they have a firm control over the center, a grip on d5. So they don't want to see us play d5, and they want to develop then and put a knight here. So that's quite clever. Of course, there are some drawbacks with these moves, because this bishop now is a bit more passive than if the pawn was on c3 or on c2. And also there is a hole in d4 that maybe we can use later on. And we might have some ideas long term, playing knight against bad bishop. If we play some endgames, that would be great. So c4 is a positional way for white to treat this position. During a long time, I played myself the move bishop e7, and I still believe it's possible to play this move. It's quite a good one. But in this DVD, I will recommend a fresh way, let's say trendy way to deal with this kind of position, which is to play with g6 and develop the bishop on g7, this bishop on e6, rook on c8, knight on f6, castle, this kind of development. I believe there's nothing wrong with bishop e7, and I played it myself a lot. Knight c3 is the main move. We go a6 now. So yes, you can remember this with a6 on this c4 lines. Usually we don't play it immediately. We wait that white puts this knight on c3, so that after a6, the b5 knight has to go on the rim of the board and to be a bit passive. You can see if you go a6 now, white would be glad because they would go knight on c3 with this knight, go to d5, and the other knight will help like this. So it would be like a perfect setup for white. So we don't go a6 too quick usually and play other stuff. So I will recommend g6. We could also start with bishop e6, which fits well our plan. Bishop e7 used to be the main line, and the idea is that yes, after knight c3 you go a6, knight to a3, and to develop with bishop e6. When I started Kalashnikov, like 20 years ago, I liked the move f5, and it's still a possibility here, but after the exchange, maybe, I mean, it's a bit risky for black because we created some holes on the light squares. So usually we don't want to trade the bishop and we go back. And white will play this kind of plans. But I was quite happy with some dynamic play, playing with knight f6, castle, queen d7. Sometimes this bishop e7 goes around like this. Anyway, it's a possibility, and you might like to play like this, and it's up to you. Anyway, I believe that if you play Kalashnikov, you like the pawn structure with Kalashnikov, and you might change, switch from one line to another, because it's more or less the same kind of position, and it's always good to avoid playing systematically the same line, especially now that player prepares easily with database and strong engines. So it might be an idea to switch time to time. A5 is maybe a bit risky, but bishop e6 is super solid. Yeah, the idea usually is to go with bishop g5 and trade the dark square bishops, and then to develop with the knight on f6, castle, queen can go there, rook on c8, rook on d8. It's a solid position. It's a solid way to play. But by playing with this new way with g6, let's say knight c3, a6, knight a3. Now we can go either way, bishop g7 or bishop e6. Both are good. Black wants just to develop the way I told, knight f6, bishop e6, castle, rook on c8. And the bishop on g7 helps because it's maybe easier now to go with knight d4 because the bishop and the pawn are controlling the square. Also, the pawn on g6 might help for two other plans, which might be to go knight f6, knight h5, and knight f4, because this pawn helps protecting the knight. And maybe sometimes also going f5, as after pawn takes is an option. So that is the line we will look at. And here, of course, white has many moves, as I mentioned, but you will face a lot knight c3 and c4. We will analyze during this DVD what happens after a move like bishop e3, like a4, like bishop c4, and so on. But yes, knight c3 is the main move by far. We go e6. As always, we wait this knight to be there to go e6. Knight goes to a3. And I will recommend this trendy line with bishop e6, played by many grandmasters nowadays. Param Makshuglu is maybe the leading expert of the line. So we develop the bishop, and that's interesting. During a while, when I started to play Kalashnikov, I liked to play b5, knight d5, knight g7, but yes, I liked to go this way and playing bishop e7, castle, go f5, and playing with counterplay. But I believe now it's just good enough for blitz games or maybe rapid games, as when white takes here, bishop e7, this line is, I believe, quite good for white. Unfortunately, because I liked playing like this, but they can grab pawns, and I don't think we have enough counterplay. I hope during a while that I could play bishop f6, go e4, maybe bishop e5, bringing the queen and everybody. But yes, this line didn't support the test of the computers and new engines, so I cannot recommend it. Here there is an interesting move, which is bishop d7, trying to take back this pawn. Black's idea is that if white takes on a6, we always have this check and taking this one. But even this line, I believe, is maybe not enough for long-term repertoire. I mean, you can play it time to time, but yes, this kind of position maybe is not that strong for black. You see, white has some good squares for his pieces, this queenside majority, and yeah, I don't feel I can recommend to play it all the time. As I mentioned, for blitz play, for rapid play, and for surprise weapon, why not? Because in this position, we looked at bishop d3, but maybe a lot of players will try this and we will have some play. So you can always have a look at this, but yeah, getting older, maybe I'm less. I'm less fearless, let's say, and I don't want to play this way anymore. During a long time, I played bishop e7 here, which is still possible. So here white has three main moves. It might be knight d5, it might be bishop e3, it might be knight c4. Knight c4 was the main move, and black used to play this way with short castle, which is a solid way to play, and this is okay, I believe. You can have a look at this and study it on your own. When I wrote a book on Kalashnikov with my French fellow grandmaster Mathieu Cornet, That was our main recommendation, to play this way. And I believe it's still solid. Usually white goes g3 in order to develop the bishop on g2. From there, the bishop helps to protect this pawn and doesn't interfere along the d file. And I used to play like this, and actually I have to say it's still possible. We want to exchange the dark square bishop, and after trade, queen takes, castle, there was this important move, rook b8. The idea is just to be a little bit prophylactic, because now after a3 we can trade, and it's quite solid actually for black. So you might want also to play this line. That was, I believe, the main line of the Kalashnikov for a while. But as I mentioned, in this DVD I want something new and not just say the same stuff I mentioned in the book I wrote. So this is a new way to deal with this position: bishop e6, knight c4, and this little move rook b8, which looks crazy at first sight, but it has its own idea. Actually, black doesn't really want to push pawns on the queen side and remain solid, because as soon as you go b5, let's say b5 now, knight moves, then white will always have some ideas to play a4 and attack our pawn chain and create some weaknesses into our position. So it's anyway possible to play this way, and it's not bad for black, but we'll try to be a little bit more conservative on the queen side and play rook b8, keeping the pawns. So the idea of rook b8 is that we are ready to meet bishop e3, because when white goes knight c4, they might like to play bishop e3, then putting a knight on b6, and both knights are ready to control the square on d5. So we have to be ready to face this threat in the position, and that's actually the idea of rook b8. We don't touch our pawn, but if you go bishop e3, then okay, we have to, but at least your knight will be there, and we will play this kind of position. So bishop e3 usually is not the move white plays here, even if it's possible, and it's not a bad option. We will have to be careful about this. Mainly white goes knight d5 or knight e3 here. Of course, there are other stuff like a4 maybe is possible. a4, I mean, yeah, maybe they want to go a5 and knight b6, but as soon as white goes a4, they always weaken this b4 square, which might be useful for us. We could put a knight on b4, and it might help to go d5. So a4 is possible, but I believe it's not the most critical way to play. As I mentioned, bishop e3 is quite interesting. Knight e3 is the main move, but I don't think it's a problem for us. And knight d5, of course, is possible. Usually we trade this knight, and we have this new pawn structure. Usually we are quite happy with this, because now the backward pawn on d6 isn't really backward anymore, because the d file is closed and this square is not strong anymore for white. So usually I like when I can play with this kind of pawn structure, and usually we go g6, bishop g7, castle, and we have some play on the king side, and maybe also in the center sometime like this. So anyway, that's one of the main moves. We will have a look, and we will analyze in details. Knight e3 is the main way to play for white, but as I say, I believe that there is nothing to fear here, because we can go knight f6, and after g3, bishop g2, which is logical, we have this new way to play with h5 and push the pawn on the h file. If white blocks with h4, they are giving us this square, which might be useful. And usually we go hg6, and the bishop might go to h6, and finding a nice diagonal here. And usually we are okay to trade the dark square bishop. So usually white goes bishop g2, but we go h4. And you can see that we already have a fighting position. Quite interesting. We want to go bishop h6 or even bishop g7 and castle. This pawn on h3 is annoying for white right now because it restricts them. Also, if white goes with f4 at some point and we trade, the king might be weak here. It's not easy to play with this kind of pawn on h3. So I would be happy to play this kind of position, and that will be my main recommendation, of course. So you have an idea of what we will discuss during this DVD. As I said, there is two main moves in this position, which are knight c3, which I believe is the best. There is c4, and so we will play this line with rook b8. And here also, three main moves, knight e3, bishop e3, and knight d5. So that will be the main theoretical part of the DVD, and I hope that you will enjoy it and have good result with the Kalashnikov thanks to these new lines.